Here's the worst career advice I've ever received, which you've probably got at some point of your life as well. Work hard and keep your heads down. If I have followed that script, I've been a lifelong individual contributor. So I actually did the total opposite. My name is Mike. I'm a former Amazon L8 general manager and director. And here's how I didn't follow the advice from my parents and school and got to the director level. I came to the US at the age of 21 with nothing but two suitcases. I barely spoke any English. And my family bet half their life savings on my education. And then fast forward a few years, I graduated right into the aftershocks of the financial crisis. Very few firms were hiring, and as a non-native speaker, the American dream felt more like a survival mode when I was playing the hard mode. But 10 years later, I got to the L8 at Amazon, which is their director and general manager level if you're not familiar with their ranking system. But it wasn't so much of a rosy road. See, early in my career, I felt this crushing pressure every time I walk into the meeting. I sit there with my heart beating, rehearsing sentences in my head, and trying to find that perfect moment to speak. And I wait and wait, and the longer I waited, the higher that emotional wall became. And I became more and more anxious and felt exhausted at the end of the meeting. Even I didn't say a single word. If you've had similar experience, I hope this video can help you. In this video, I'm going to talk about three mechanisms happening in our brain which play against us when we try to speak up in meetings. I'm going to give you two scenarios that you encounter more often at workplaces where you need to speak up but couldn't. And finally, one action that you can use in the next meeting to break through and become confident and earn respect from others. When we're feeling that crushing pressure, it's not that our brain is failing because we didn't know the right word. It's because our brain is a computer trying to run three heavy programs at once. What to say, how to say it, and when to say it. And here's what happens in our brain when we try to speak. I'm gonna brutally oversimplify it for the ease of understanding. There's a part of our brain called prefrontal cortex, which is the director of our brain. It handles logic, reasoning, complex planning, and decision making. But it only has limited working memory. So when it figures out that you need to talk, it actually sends a signal to a few other parts of your brain. You have your Broca's area, your Wernicke's area, your basal ganglia, your motor cortex, to just name a few. And by the way, you don't need to know the deliberation between these areas because they're still being studied. You just need to know that these areas work together when we try to speak. And these parts of brain do not consume as much bandwidth as the prefrontal cortex because they act based on the past patterns and habits for the most part. But the issue is they only act as good as our habits and muscle memory. So if you are well trained in what we call talk the talk in meetings, your prefrontal cortex puts together the general thoughts, the logic, and then it sends a go signal to those parts. And the right words will just flow out of your mouth. Combined with the right nonverbal cues like body language, hand gestures, you'll just look and sound confident and convincing. And when you're not trained in corporate talk, or maybe you're a non-native speaker like myself, your prefrontal cortex will work much harder on multiple things. First is doing that abstract reasoning and strategic thinking, and then it's retrieving the right words. And if the topic is not something that you are familiar with, or if you're a non-native speaker, you're pulling memories of syntax, grammar, and pronunciation, and in the meantime, decoding that semantics of the ongoing conversation while suppressing your self-doubt. And this consumes way more computing power than someone who's trained in talk to talk, who uses other parts like the Broca's area, Wernicke's area, basal ganglia, motor cortex to do this part of the job based on their past habits and the past patterns. And the last thing is, when you're not trained in thinking on your feet, your prefrontal cortex monitors social cues, the timing, the gap, and constantly calculates when you should jump in. And the result is that your brain is going to hit that what we call cognitive bottleneck because all the three tasks are all competing for the same limited neural resources in the prefrontal cortex. And your system will lag just like a computer is trying to run like 3 big 4K PC games all at the same time. And while your prefrontal cortex is already overwhelmed, your amygdala, the brain's ancient security guard, is actively making things worse. It scans for social friction before sensory data even reaches the conscious part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. Evolutionarily, being rejected by the tribe or a group of peers meant death to our ancestors. Therefore, this becomes a dangerous signal. So if the amygdala senses that you aren't participating, it's interpreting your silence as a survival threat. And this triggers the freeze response. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. These two hormones are designed to keep you safe. Think about what happens when you step too close to the edge of a cliff. Your amygdala doesn't wait for you to think about the height. It bypasses your logic and slams your body directly into the freeze response via flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your mind goes blank because at the moment, strategic planning is just a waste of energy. Your brain has one goal: don't move, don't fall, just be alive. But in the meeting, they physically inhibits the prefrontal cortex. Your brain practically unplugs your strategic thinking to prioritize survival. The amygdala also thrives on anticipation. When you sit in silence, the conversation is practically out of your control, which signals to your amygdala to keep pumping those dangerous signals into your system. And this is why when you can leave a meeting without saying a single word and still feel completely exhausted, because you've been in a state of high intensity survival for the length of that meeting. Now, how do you hack the biological bottleneck? Well, mastering your executive presence and refining your communication skill are the long-term keys to the boardroom. You need a tool that you can use tomorrow morning in the next meeting. So here's a simple action you can take to hack the bottleneck. It's very simple. Always be the first person to speak in the meeting. Now, what to speak about? It's situational, but from my experience, there are 2 scenarios that happen more often than others. Scenario number 1 is if you want to set a high energy, a positive tone of a meeting, lead with a success story, share a quick win. This primes your brain with dopamine, which physically blocks the stress of the meeting and signals to everyone in the room that you're the one defining the energy. This usually applies with big meetings with double digits of attendees, but you can also use in smaller sync-ups, group meetings. You can start with, hey folks, before we start, I want to share a quick success from last week, and then you fill the blank with your success. Scenario number 2 is that if you're in a meeting where you need some clarity, you lead with a question. Use what I called alignment bridge. This usually applies to smaller meetings with 3 to 5 people. If you are an attendee, you can ask the meeting host, before we deep dive, Joe, is there an ideal target of what you want us to walk away with by the end of the meeting? And if you're the host of the meeting, you can say, before we start the meeting, I'd like to align us on the overarching goal of the meeting, and then you can fill the blank of your goal. And you ask group, any objections? Whether it's a success or a question, the goal is the same. You're taking action before your internal critiques get out of bed. And that crushing pressure will just begin melting away from the moment those first few words leave your mouth. I attach a free PDF of other scenarios that don't happen as often, but how to speak up in those meetings and be the first person in the description. If you made it so far, what we're discussing clearly resonates with your career goals, hit the subscribe button. It's the fastest way to tell the algorithm that you want more content like this, and it's the fastest way to support me. I've studied across multiple academic subjects such as psychology, cognitive behavioral science, neuroscience, linguistics, to distill the frameworks and methods from them to applied work. And I've experimented with these frameworks and methods on myself to see what sticks and what doesn't. The other day I spent over 10,000 hours doing different trials and errors in all sorts of meetings to figure out what works. I call them beyond the script learnings. These frameworks and methods got me promoted 4 times in 8 years, and I helped over 100 mentees get promoted as well. And my mission here is to share them with people like you so you don't need to spend another 10 years or 10,000 hours to do the trial and errors like I did. And if you want to speed up your learning curve of having an executive presence, I offer a simulation course where I give personalized strategies to accelerate your career. And I will put the link in the description. Back to the hack. Why does it work? As I mentioned earlier, the amygdala thrives on anticipation. The longer you sit in silence, the more data the amygdala collects about potential social risks, causing it to ramp up your heart rate and anxiety. When you speak first, you act before the amygdala finishes that threat assessment. And by taking action early, you actually send a signal back to the amygdala that you're the predator in the room, not the prey. And it lowers the cortisol levels for the rest of the meeting. And you've effectively told your Asian security guard that the room is safe. And as we discussed earlier, your prefrontal cortex is a high energy processor with very limited bandwidth. When you wait to talk, your prefrontal cortex is clogged with the three competing tasks. What do I say? How do I say it? And when do I say it? Speaking first removes the when variable entirely by removing the need to constantly monitor the gap to chime in. And also, you've probably prepared what you're going to say following the templates that I offered in this video, which further alleviates your brain bandwidth that you would have been spending on thinking what to say and how to say it. This strategy practically free up 100% of your brain power to actually focus on the nuances of the argument and the influence of the room rather than just, doing the survival mode. And all of these neurodynamics happen in your brain within a 500 millisecond window. The moment you break the silence, became the first person to speak, the pressure will just fade away. And at this point, your heart rate begins to stabilize and that brain fog started lifting itself. If you have a bottle of water ready, just take a sip. It's a physical signal to your body to start recycling that excess cortisol. And you've just moved yourself out of that state of survival. And that wraps up the video. But I don't want you to just watch the video. I want you to prove it to yourself. So I'm going to give you a challenge. For the very next meeting, I don't care if it's a 3-4 people sync up or a 20 people organizational wide meeting, be the first person to speak. Don't overthink about it and use the free template from this video and speak up. Once you do it, I want you to come back to this video and drop a comment of how you felt differently for the rest of that meeting versus that meeting where you keep looking for ways to speak up but never did so. And I will be in the comment section responding to as many of you as I can.